Good afternoon and welcome back. You're watching World Talks here on TVP World. I'm Celia Strzemska. The re-election of Donald Trump, now to become America's 47th president, has sent shockwaves through the European continent. Trump's first time in office saw a dramatic souring of relations with the EU. He was angry that A, European countries didn't pay more towards their own security, and B, about the US trade deficit with Europe. Will his return to power be any different? To discuss key issues Europe could be facing following Trump's return, I am joined here this afternoon by Tanya Domi, Adjunct Assistant Professor of International Relations and Public Affairs at Columbia University. Good afternoon. Delighted to have you with us.
Good afternoon.
Right. So let me start by asking you about the general mood. How do people feel about this re-election?
Well, for Democrats, people are very, very upset, obviously, and there's a lot of fear. For example, I live in New York City, which has a significant immigrant population, which is the tradition of New York City, and many people are quite afraid, and people fear what's coming, what will happen. And as people probably are aware, Mr. Trump has said on first day he will take action to close the southern border of the United States. And he has also announced that he would deport millions of people, which also would be a significant blow to the economy of the United States. So there's a lot of fear and trepidation. For his supporters, obviously, they're thrilled and happy. And as a matter of fact, there was a significant shift to the right in the United States. I would call this a political realignment that is conservative. In this case, unlike Reagan in 1980, which was also a political realignment, it was much more moderate in comparison. This is a radical shift to the right. And he has control right now of the Senate. The U.S. House of Representatives the count has not been made final yet. They're still counting because there are many seats in California, and it's not clear that the Democrats can hang on to the House of Representatives. So if that does come to pass, Mr. Trump will be able to run every aspect of the government under Republican control.
Right. And from our perspective here in the CE, what can we expect? What kind of policies will he try to introduce?
Sure. I do believe, as many Europeans know, many European leaders are watching. He has indicated he does not support NATO and that he would pull the United States out of NATO. He hasn't said anything about it since he won yesterday. However, given his track record on the issues related to NATO, and as you said in the opening, he demanded that other countries that were participating in NATO had to pay their fair share. That might be fair overall in balance, but I believe he will move in that direction, and it will be interesting to see if the U.S. Senate under Republican control will back him on that. There are many senators on the Republican Party that don't agree with him on the issue of NATO. And also, as everybody knows, there's a war going on in Ukraine. It was reported yesterday that Mr. Zelensky did speak to former President Trump, calling it a constructive and positive conversation. And of course, Mr. Trump has indicated that he doesn't agree with the Biden approach towards Ukraine, supporting the Ukraine government in its war with Russia. As everyone knows, Mr. Trump has been very outspoken in his support and his personal like of Vladimir Putin. So that is of great concern. And I think that Europeans that are involved in and focused also on the Gaza Israel war that is now also in Lebanon. There's going to be probably a likely change in that regard too. And apparently it's been reported that Mr. Netanyahu spoke to Mr. Trump and they had a good conversation. And it's very clear that Trump will not try to stop Netanyahu's further expansion of the war in the Middle East. He's been fairly supportive of him.
Right, but at the same time, there's this counter argument. People are saying that it really depends whom Trump appoints, in his administration, who will become his Secretary of Defense, perhaps. So, do you think this is a valid argument, or will Trump end up doing whatever he wants?
I think Trump runs the government like it's his business, and he likes to have his people very close to him. And I think ultimately he makes the decisions. I do not believe that the people he puts into these different positions, including at head of the Pentagon or at the State Department, are going to be freewheeling independent agents. It's not going to be like that at all.
Okay, so a European Political Community Summit is taking place in Budapest as we speak. What kind of strategies do you think that European leaders will have to devise to be able to cope with this, pretty gloomy picture?
Yes, this is a very gloomy picture. Now, this security meeting, European security meeting in Budapest, it's kind of ironic to me that Mr. Orban is, the co-host, and Mr. Orban enjoys a very close relationship with Mr. Trump. He advised the Heritage Foundation in the United States on Project 2025 that proposes draconian changes to U.S. policy across the board, including not only in education, higher education in the United States, but we're talking about everything from higher education to reproductive rights. And CPAC, which is the Conservative Political Action Committee that supports the Republican Party, has held its conference in Budapest. So there are many leaders in Europe that aren't necessarily in opposition to Mr. Trump. Orban's a good example of that. There's a split. There's a split in Europe, just like there's a split in other geopolitical locations in the world. And Mr. Trump has expressed his affection for the premier of China and Mr. Orban. He's repeatedly brought up Orban during the campaign, how much he likes him. And I would really call these people, including Vladimir Putin, these are the brothers in populism, including the Prime Minister of Italy as well. So there's a lot of people that agree with him. So this is what's going to be interesting within the European Union. How are they going to negotiate that? That is, I think it's quite challenging. I think we'll see how strong Berlin is going to weigh in on this with Chancellor Scholz.
Definitely a very, very interesting time. Let's hope that the situation will be resolved somehow peacefully. And of course, Ukraine here is crucial. Tanya Domi, thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. Much appreciated.
My pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
And thank you for watching World Talks. Please stay tuned for more here on TVP World.